Hello, welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm McKelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 25 of our chapter by chapter book review of Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we will be discussing chapter 24 of A Game of Thrones, which is Bran 4.
All right, and we'll chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, and hopefully we will provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry and cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out the show notes, they'll provide some additional information about the characters and other things of note in this chapter.
Yes, sir.
You alright?
Yeah. I went to a cool place last night with a couple friends called the Drive Shack.
It's a golf place, right?
Yeah, we had a really good time.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
It's like sort of like a half real, half video game type thing.
Exactly. Yeah, we played darts so that it turns the driving range into a big dartboard, and it tracks your ball and where it lands on the dartboard. It scores. It's pretty amazing how they can track, because it's not just one ball. I mean, that's a huge place.
Right.
There's balls flying all over out there.
Right.
Somehow it can track just yours. So pretty cool. How about you?
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Not much going on. I was telling stories about travel the other day, and I was telling one about, I was in Germany and I was desperately tight for a connection, and I landed at Frankfurt airport and I had to get off this plane as quickly as possible, and it was a big plane. I was in like row 30 of like 40 rows, and so when it was taxiing, I got my bag ready and I had my seatbelt unbuckled, and as soon as the sign went off, I ran forward as quick as I could. I got like 10 extra rows forward by being so quick, and then they announced they were going to open the front and the back doors of the plane. So by doing this, I ended up being the very last human being off the plane.
Like the pilots and the flight attendants were off ahead of you.
And when I got down to the bottom of the stairs, there were two buses. It wasn't a jetway, it was two buses. And I said to the guy, which of these buses will leave first? And he said, that one. So I got on that one, and the other one immediately departed. I miss my connection.
Yeah?
I miss my connection.
I can't see how. Everything went so smoothly.
And I'm pretty sure it was transatlantic. I think I was coming home from...
travel.
Yeah. All right, we'll get down to business.
Oh, I just noticed. Quick sock check. Look at that.
Hey!
Look how in sync we are.
We are in sync. We went for Greyjoy.
Yes, how's
who I think we're going to get a mention in this episode.
These are one of my more favorite socks.
Me too, actually. They are... there's something cool about a kraken as a sigil.
Yeah, I like that.
All right. Let's get cracking. Last time we saw Bran, he was regaining consciousness after surviving being pushed out of the ruined tower by Jaime Lannister. His dreams seem supernatural and prophetic, but his body is irrevocably damaged. McKelly, why don't we give us the summary?
I liked how we did that last time. So Bran watches Summer, Grey Wind, and Shaggy Dog chasing Rickon in the yard from a window. The little guy is fearless with the wolves, and Bran holds back tears because he's so envious. Old Nan is in the room with him. She is so old, Bran isn't even sure which generation of Starks were living in Winterfell when she got there. She constantly confuses him with at least his uncle Brandon, if not several previous generations of Brans.
Bran feels like everyone has abandoned him, even Robb, who is still at Winterfell, but Robb is busy being Robb the Lord more often than not these days, leaving him with Old Nan as his only but constant companion.
Yep, and Old Nan tells Bran a story about the others, the Long Night and the Last Hero, that both enraptured and scared the bejesus out of Bran. I hope that's a term that translates into
I think it'll get the message across.
Okay. But before she can finish, Maester Luwin enters and tells Bran that he is wanted in the Great Hall.
Tyrion Lannister, his two companions, and 3 brothers of the Night's Watch have arrived. When Bran gets to the hall, carried by the simple-minded giant Hodor, things are contentious between Robb and Tyrion. Tyrion has designed a saddle that will let Bran ride a horse. Just then, the 3 wolves pad into the hall and surround Tyrion, growling and snapping at him. The boys call them off before any serious damage can be done. Robb tries to recant his previous mistreatment of Tyrion in light of the saddle. But Tyrion decides to leave for a room in an inn rather than Robb's hospitality.
So at dinner that night, the Black brothers that are traveling with Tyrion, who do stay in Winterfell, first tell the boys news of Jon before admitting that their Uncle Benjen is missing. The most senior member, Yoren, which you might remember from Tyrion 2, says that he's dead. This sends Robb into a burst of anger, insisting that he's not dead. Later in the darkness of Bran's room, the boys hold hands, and Bran can hear Robb sobbing. In that moment, he's not Robb the Lord, he is Robb the brother.
Yeah. So, we're back to Westeros. I feel like my excitement of the book now is mainly centered around Essos with Daenerys and around King's Landing.
Yeah.
I find the chapters away from those two to be a little bit... And I think I'm kind of generous to Daenerys because I think her story is not that interesting yet, but it's got potential.
Right.
But everything that happens at King's Landing gets me excited, whereas the North and the Wall are just kind of like, eh.
Yeah. Well, I think in King's Landing is where, I'm going to use quotes here, the Game of Thrones is being played.
Well done.
And especially Eddard's chapters are the ones that at the moment intrigue me the most.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm not disparaging what you've just done, but
Bran has a lot of interesting things to talk about.
But it's got to be heartbreaking for him to watch the direwolves playing together.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to think that even as a child, you've got to see the sort of spirit companionness of the direwolf to yourself, and that Summer is running with the other dogs while he's stuck in there.
Yeah, poor. That's terrible.
Yeah.
So he's rightfully so. He's pouting and feeling sorry for himself, which, like I said, he has every right to do. He's suffered a terribly traumatic event, and old Nan, who's sitting with him as basically his constant companion, he kind of complains that she's always left with him, and she tries to cheer him up by offering to tell him some stories, and he gets mad at her because he's lashing out because he's upset and says, "I hate your stories and I hate you." No, he doesn't say "I hate you," but she tells him one anyway, and she tells him the story of how the others were defeated by the children of the forest and of a nameless hero known as the Last Hero, which I mentioned in the background info when we talked about the Long Night in Tyrion 3, where he was at the wall. I mentioned all this, but Nan did a much better job of making it more interesting, and she's obviously a very good storyteller, so thank you.
She is actually George Martin.
Right.
She's a professional.
Yeah.
So she talks about the winters, the snows being 100 feet deep.
Yeah. She paints a pretty terrible picture of the Long Night. Much better, much more descriptive than my version of the Long Night.
And so we get reference to the previous civilizations, the First Men, the Andals, the Rhoynar, the Children of the Forest.
Yeah.
When Bran says he doesn't like her stories, she makes the point that they're not her stories, that these stories are real and they exist before and will outlast her as well.
She's a pretty interesting character.
Yeah.
I like Old Nan. I think she brings some cool stuff to the table, and like we mentioned in the summary, she's been around so long, nobody knows exactly how long. Yeah. Bran mentions that even Eddard said that she was called Old Nan since he can remember.
And he's ancient. He's like 30. So what relation is she to Hodor?
She is some great something or other to Hodor.
But his real name is Waldor.
Yes, not Hodor. Yeah, poor Bran. He really, he just wants everything back to the way it used to be, which, of course, you'd understand, especially for a child having gone through something. But it's not just his legs that he wants back to normal.
Yeah, exactly. If you woke up paralyzed, that would be awful. But you wake up paralyzed and almost everyone you know and love has abandoned you.
Right.
That's got to be the worst part of it for him,
His actual line is, "It felt as if they all had died while he slept, or perhaps Bran had died and they had forgotten him," which is pretty tough. And Maester Luwin mentions that he sent ravens to Eddard, Cat, and Jon, announcing that Bran had woken and didn't get any responses. So that can't have helped his psyche.
It does make you wonder how worthwhile Cat's trip was.
Yeah, well, you had mentioned, it might have been one of Catelyn's chapters, maybe the one where she arrived at King's Landing or so. You didn't necessarily get why she was doing it in the first place, what she was really going to gain from taking this dagger to find out who it belonged to, on the off chance she could find out who it belonged to.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a little bit more, and actually, I think she should have taught Ned her and Lysa Arryn's secret code.
Right.
Or which I think of as just make stuff up and throw the paper in the fire.
Then
you could have just sent them a letter.
They could have talked by Raven.
Yeah. So Bran references that Robb's changed. He's not just the fun-loving big brother he used to be. He is Robb the Lord.
Right. And, he mentions that Robb doesn't have much time for him anymore. He spends most of his time with Maester Luwin or Hollis Mullen or Theon Greyjoy. And once again, we've got Theon Greyjoy, who is theoretically kind of a hostage of a house that had not that long ago challenged Robert's reign. He's again, probably hearing information that you wouldn't want your enemies to know about,
Yeah.
Clearly, Robb thinks of Theon as a confidant and a really good friend.
Yeah.
He seems to be his constant companion.
Although, let's be honest, what is Theon hearing from Robb? Robb is running the North, but
right.
Most of it is just like ruling on disagreements and putting food aside for the winter and things like that.
Yeah, that's true.
The fact that Robb is in charge and everyone's gone, now that's an interesting little tidbit for the Greyjoys. Should the Greyjoys still harbour rebellious notions?
Right. That's true. Yeah.
But again, looking at Theon's loyalties, he was raised here. The Stark children are his brothers and sisters.
Right.
More than anybody else. He's probably forgotten his family.
Possibly. He said to Kat when she swore them all to secrecy when she was going to tell them all her ideas about what's really going on with Bran. He said, Lord Eddard is a second father to me. Yeah. Now, we questioned whether he was just saying that because he wanted to hear the gossip or whether he truly meant that, but he very well may have truly meant that.
Yeah. So when Bran's called to the hall because Tyrion's arrived, we get a very contentious scene.
Yeah.
Tyrion questions how he fell, which again, going to the how involved Tyrion was in all this, it just seems like the kind of thing you wouldn't say.
Right.
but then he does use the unfortunate phrase, "You Starks are hard to kill."
Right. That one, I was like, ooh. Might want to rethink that phrasing.
Yeah.
But so Bran gets down to the hall, and Robb is sitting there with a sword unsheathed.
Right.
And even Bran, who is an 8-year-old boy, knows that, that means something when you greet someone with live, open steel like that. So that, was not exactly a love fest going on down there.
Yeah. So, but Tyrion's saddle is a very thoughtful gift. He has designed the saddle, but he says it needs to be a horse that hasn't previously been ridden. This horse needs to be broken into this particular saddle, and it has to be a smart horse who can understand the signals that Bran's giving it.
Yeah, he says it's not unlike his own saddle.
Oh, right, I see. Yeah.
And then they question why are you doing this for Bran? And he mentions that Jon asked him to help him, so...
Which, that's also a little bit noble of Tyrion. It's true, but Tyrion did the work here.
Right. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Credit to Jon for asking someone to do something nice for somebody else, but...
Right. Yeah, definitely Tyrion gets the credit on this one. Yeah. Very solid by him.
So, tell me, why did the direwolves attack Tyrion?
That is a very good question, because there was a lot of people in that room. They could have attacked Yoren or anyone, any of the other people from the Night's Watch, but they immediately came in, surrounded Tyrion, and then I think it was Grey Wind grabbed him and grabbed his sleeve and ripped his sleeve off, and they had to call the wolves off him. I do not know.
I have a theory that so the accusation is that the knife at some point belonged to Tyrion Lannister.
His scent was on it. Is that where you're going?
That's where I'm going with this. The wolves smelled that.
Yeah.
And they were like, "This is the guy. This is the guy who sent that guy."
Yeah. It would.
We don't know if Peter Baelish is telling the truth about that, but it feels like.
Yeah, if he's telling the truth, and that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because there's really no other reason, but it did provide for a funny line. But Tyrion says, they ask him if he's all right, and he said, "My sleeve is torn and my breeches are unaccountably damp, but nothing was harmed save my dignity."
Yeah. Just checking on the sort of sequence of events, Summer is the first wolf to growl, and Grey Wind picks up on the growl.
Right.
And then Theon says, the wolves don't like your smell, Lannister. So I think there's something there that it's...
Right.
Summer is the one who's leading them. Because, of course, the other two wolves never would have smelled the knife.
Yeah, they weren't there.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I like that. Yeah, it certainly would explain why they've singled out Tyrion like so.
Yeah. So the gift and the fact that the wolves nearly killed him make Robb backpedal from his initial treatment.
Yeah.
Puts away the sword and offers him hospitality.
Yeah, Tyrion's not having it.
No, Tyrion figures he'll stay outside of Winterfell.
Yeah. So I was thinking about it. Robb, he's mistreating Tyrion, which is kind of a big deal for a lord to mistreat a guest in his own house. But he doesn't know, he can't possibly know that Cat found out that the knife, the dagger that was used in the attempt to kill Bran, was owned by Tyrion. So he must just be basing it solely off of Cat saying that she thinks the Lannisters are involved in
right,
Bran's
which she did say that before she left.
Yes.
So, but yes, he doesn't have any more evidence against Tyrion than that.
Yeah, so that's not a whole lot to go on to kind of break tradition and mistreat a guest like so, especially with a open sword. And at one point, he takes a sword and points it in his face. And that's when Tyrion says that Jon got all his father's graces.
Right.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
So Bran goes back to his room and falls asleep with Summer next to him.
Yep, Hodor carries him up there, and he dreams again. And once again, in his dream, he is 1,000 miles up. I'm starting to think that's the only distance that he knows in his dreams is 1,000 miles. Because he was 1,000 miles in the air when he was falling. Now he's 1,000 miles in the air when he's climbing. So
if he falls out of bed, he thinks it's 1,000 miles.
Yeah, there's clearly references to what happened with the Lannisters when he was climbing last time. At one point, he keeps saying to himself, I didn't hear, and
which smacks of a guilty conscience. Like,
you heard,
you heard something.
You heard,
you heard enough to deny you heard it.
Yeah.
So the other thing he has in the dream is that he's climbing up using the gargoyles, and he mentions that the gargoyles probably were lions, but now they're twisted and grotesque, which certainly that sequence of words takes you towards Tyrion Lannister.
Right, yeah. Or you could even take that in a even more metaphorical sense, in that the Lannisters were once lions and now they're twisted and grotesque.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
I mean, given that we know who he's going to find at the top of that thing, we know it's not Tyrion.
Yes.
It's the twisted and grotesque Lannisters that are not physically twisted and grotesque.
Right. And we know that what Bran oversaw in his mind was probably rather twisted and grotesque. Although I don't think it quite registered what he was seeing, but yes. I believe he knows they were brother and sister.
Yes.
So
after he wakes back up, he dines with the Night's Watchmen.
Yeah. And there's one quick little thing that the dogs don't come near the hall anymore because of the wolves. And Bran used to think that weird, and now he just like rolls with it. But I thought that was interesting that the wolves have pretty much claimed.
Wolves are the alphas here now.
Yeah, and then while he's eating, he overhears one of the Night's Watchmen, I can't remember which, referred to Sir Alistair's Bane, and I thought, I think I know who he's talking about.
John?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it might be.
Just checking, yes.
Yeah. It might have been Tyrion, too, of course.
So they talk about Uncle Benjen being missing north of the wall.
Yeah.
And was it Yoren who says most likely he's dead?
Yeah, I was like, how about some tact, guy? Come on.
I guess
You're talking to children here. Yeah, he's probably dead.
Yeah, I think the Night's Watch are kind of like Stark to the max, you know.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
We live on this cold wall. Oh, that guy died. Yeah, he was my favorite.
Yeah, I really liked him. He's dead.
Let's burn his body in case he wakes up.
That really sends Robb over the edge.
Yeah. I mean, again, this goes to the sort of psyche of both Robb and Bran here, that they have a sense of abandonment and they can't face the thought of losing yet another close member of the family.
Right. Yeah,
in quick succession.
They've lost, whether to just leaving or what, they've lost pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
And
I mean, they've got themselves. We constantly forget Rickon. They have Rickon too.
I do forget baby Rickon. So, I think everyone has forgotten, including his parents.
So there are 3 of them there, but I guess he's sort of pre-vocal, so really they've only got each other to talk to.
Yeah, that's true.
Bran flails out in his panic about Benjen being missing and says that the children of the forest will protect him. The children of the forest will protect him.
Right.
And this makes Theon snicker at Bran. And Maester
Seems
Lewin...
like he does that a lot.
Yes. Maester Lewin a little more sympathetically says, Bran, the children have been dead for thousands of years. Their only remnant is the faces in the trees.
Yeah.
But then Yoren says, well, down here that might be true, but up past the wall, who's to say? Up there, a man can't always tell what's alive and what's dead.
Right. I like that line. That's a pretty cool line.
Yeah, so Yoren... And again, this makes me think a little bit more all the way back to poor old Garrod. You know? Yoren's talking like he knows that others exist, that the dead awake. But Garrod, who's as crusty a night's watchman as Yoren, he fled and had his head cut off.
Right. Yeah, he did not handle that very well.
Yeah, but maybe Yoren just believes the stories.
Right.
If Yoren were to experience the stories, he too might head for the hills.
Yeah, that's true. And that also had me thinking that we were just talking in the last Tyrion chapter about how Tyrion thinks all this others talk is so silly, and we were like, yeah, pretty much anywhere outside of the north it just seems like ridiculousness. But even in the north, they're in Winterfell and pretty much everyone is scoffing at the idea except for Bran, who's a little boy. So.
Yeah, and old Nan, who tells the stories, keeps the legends alive.
So I guess maybe it's the wall is isolated and only people that believe that there could be such things out there, and those of us who read the prologue.
Yeah. So Robb carries Bran back to bed. They're abandoned and frightened, as we said.
Yeah. This is when you really start to get some clues as to why Robb reacted the way he did about Benjen being considered to be possibly dead.
So they lay on the bed together, and Robb says that when Mother gets home, they'll ride out to meet her.
Yes.
Together with
won't she be so shocked to see you a horse, I believe he says.
And then they'll surprise Jon at the wall as well.
If they get there before he says the words, he might surprise them and come back home with them.
And I think they both fall asleep, or Bran falls asleep while they're holding hands.
Yeah, so they're holding hands, and it's dark, so Bran can't see Robb's face, but he can hear him sobbing. And he thinks, there's my brother. That's not Robb the Lord there.
Yeah.
If you think about life from Robb's perspective, Bran obviously had the tragedy of, his fall and now losing the use of his legs, but Robb's had quite a go of things too.
The difference, of course, apart from the fact one's older and more able to cope with such things, is that Robb is busy.
Right.
And his mind is constantly taken off his own sorrows. Bran has literally got nothing to do but sit and dwell on them. So I definitely think it's worse for Bran.
Yeah, that's true. And theoretically, Catelyn should be back at some point. Robb should have his burden lightened when Cat returns. His mom returns and can help him.
Although, I gotta say, in my imagining forward to that moment, I think she's going to spend an awful lot of time with Bran.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
True. Yeah,
hey, you're doing a good job. Keep at it.
Right. Pat on the back.
Yeah. Remember I sat here for like a week without eating and drinking while he wasn't doing anything? Now he's awake. I'm not going to miss out on these opportunities.
And would you mind looking after your baby brother?
Yeah, that's right. God, I'd forgotten about that one. Poor Rick, and he's as feral as Shaggy Dog. You know? He's just,
well, like you said I think it was last episode? No, it was the beginning. It was just about a
spirit
half hour ago. Yes, the spirit animals. Yes, that's where we're going with that. They're definitely spirit animals there.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
All right, so to background, Brandon the Builder. So Brandon the Builder comes up in Nan's stories.
Yeah, she thinks that Bran's favorite stories are Brandon the Builder's stories. And he's like, no, you got me confused with another Brandon. I like the scary stories.
Right. Which he then regrets saying because she gives him the scary stories in spades and scares the living daylights out of him.
Lady, you're scaring me.
So Brandon the Builder Brandon Stark was the legendary founder of House Stark. So back 6,000 years ago, said to have lived during the Age of Heroes. According to the legend, Brandon built the Wall and Winterfell.
Bran mentions that in this chapter that he did those things.
Some stories say he did this with the help of giants, and certainly the Wall could use some giants in the building of it. According to a ballad in Maester Childer's Winter's Kings, or the legends and lineages of the Starks of Winterfell, Brandon also sought assistance from the Children of the Forest and learned to understand the true tongue in order to do so.
Wow.
There you go.
Man. And we were impressed by Kat's ability to learn her gibberish language. That's a whole nother level.
He's also credited with building such important structures around Westeros as Storm's End, the Baratheon castle in the Stormlands, and the stone high tower at Old Town. He was a prodigious builder. I would have thought you'd get Bran the Builder just from the Wall, but all of this stuff too.
Maybe those were his first tricks.
Some credit the Bran's son as the builder of Hightower. He was also named Brandon, so 6,000 years ago, 2 Brandon Starks building easily get munged into one.
Senior and junior get lost.
Yeah, a lot of scholars think maybe an ancient king's actions have been exaggerated into legend, or the reigns of multiple kings have been remembered as one through the passage of time. It's also said that Brandon gave the Night's Watch Brandon's Gift, a stretch of land 25 leagues wide south of the Wall, to be their farmlands to keep them fed. Again, some masters argue this was done by another Brandon of House Stark. There apparently have been lots of them.
Right.
The thing to remember about the Age of Heroes is that it all happened thousands of years before the maesters who recorded it lived. So nobody really knows how much the stories have, how much truth the stories have to them. The Wall does physically exist.
Right, so someone built it.
Someone did build it.
It is quite the structure. So certainly, if there are giants, it would certainly make sense that they were involved in helping build it.
But, I mean, you can see how the Maesters wrote the histories. I mean, that people like Old Nan have the legends, in story form. That becomes the written version eventually at some point.
So Lord Rickard gets a mention. He is Bran's grandfather, and
Ned's father.
Yes, he's Ned's father.
Gotcha.
And Bran mentions that Old Nan keeps getting him confused with a bunch of other previous Brandons so far back that
I think we just had 3 a second ago in my background.
Right.
So.
And we know that we have a boy here named Bran, and his uncle was named Brandon.
Yep.
So he mentions that this Brandon was either the younger brother or the older brother of Rickard Stark. But that is actually not true, because Rickard was an only child.
Oh.
Yeah, so Lord Rickard was the only child of Lord Edwyle Stark and Lady Marna Locke. So the Brandon that we believe that Nan was originally brought in to be the wet nurse for, that Brandon was our Bran's great-grandfather, Edwyle's half-brother.
A half-brother of Edwyle, okay.
Yes, Edwyle's half-brother, who would be some, I don't know, great-great-uncle or something like that.
Yeah, great-great-uncle, yeah. Yeah, I think you get one extra great when you're an uncle. Your grandfather and your great uncle are the same generation.
Yeah.
So your great grandfather and your great great uncle.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
So
Yeah,
great
that
great
makes
uncle.
sense.
Yeah.
And that Brandon was the son of William Stark and Lyanne Glover. That Brandon died roughly around 70 years ago, so
Old Nan is pretty old.
she is pretty old.
Yeah.
Now, he does say she might be the oldest person in the Seven Kingdoms, but we know Maester Aemon is 100.
Oh, right.
So
There you
I
go.
think he might have her by a
Yeah,
bit.
by a bit. If she was a wet nurse. Oh, but that's when he died.
Yeah, he died at age 3, though.
Oh, okay. She wasn't very good wet nurse. Surprised they kept her around.
Died of the summer chill.
Okay.
So, Rickard married his cousin once
Rickard,
removed.
let's go back to who Rickard
Yes,
is.
Rickard-
Rickard is Bran's grandfather.
Yes, Ned's father.
Ned's
yes.
father, yep.
So Rickard married his cousin once removed, Lyanna Stark, and had the 4 children we are familiar with. Brandon, which is Uncle Brandon, Eddard, Lyanna, and Benjen.
Gotcha.
Not a ton of info is available on Rickard. The details of his death will be revealed in the book, so we won't go into that. Really, the only other info I could find on Rickard that was even noteworthy is that he negotiated the betrothal of his heir, Brandon, Uncle Brandon, to Caitlin Tully.
Yeah, we know about that.
Yes, we certainly know well about that. And she ended up marrying Ned, and Brandon was killed. It is said that Rickard accepted a betrothal between his daughter Lyanna and Lord Robert Baratheon of Storm's End, now King Robert, when Ned carried Robert's proposal to Winterfell. If you remember, Ned and Robert were fostered with Jon Arryn in the Vale
right.
from the time they were 8 until they were 16. So he brought the proposal home with him on a
Gotcha.
trip home.
Okay. So the comparison with the TV show, I slightly spoiled some of this because when we talked about Bran's dream chapter earlier, I said that Nan had some of the stories, but in actual
Right.
fact, that was these stories.
Yeah.
But in some ways, they kind of do overlap. Bran's dream and Nan's stories have some
Yes.
commonality to them.
Yeah, right.
So sorry about that. Her stories are almost exactly the same in the show as they were in the book, and they definitely scared Bran.
Right.
Theon brings Hodor to carry Bran down. Summer growls at Theon.
Really?
Interestingly. Robb is similarly unpleasant to Tyrion, but the wolves don't attack Tyrion in the TV show.
Okay.
Tyrion does not have news of Benjen as the timelines are slightly different,
Right.
so we don't get the touching Robb Bran scene. We do get a very interesting scene in which Tyrion quizzes Theon as to where the hell Catelyn Stark is.
Yeah. Huh. I don't remember that.
Uh-huh.
That's
It also leads to some backstory about Theon, which I won't bring up because presumably we'll get it in the book, but Tyrion talks to Theon, and we get a little bit of Theon's backstory there.
okay.
So leading on to pedantry, this is slightly TV show pedantry. No, actually, well, why didn't Tyrion in the book ask where Caitlyn was? that scene in the TV show made me think about that. It's like,
Yeah.
that was something that Tyrion Lannister would not have missed.
Now Bran came in when they were already. He wasn't there when they first met Robb and Tyrion, so it's possible he could have asked him that before Bran got there.
Right, but I'd be curious what answer Robb gave, because
That's a good point.
she's off finding evidence against you.
That is a solid point. Yeah.
So that occurred to me. That was a nice addition on the TV show, because I think it was an important question that Tyrion would have asked.
Yeah. I like that.
The other bit of TV show pedantry is that now Tyrion has Lannister bodyguards, which he didn't seem to have on the way up to the wall. It's
I remember you mentioning that in the Tyrion 2 chapter, that he didn't have the bodyguards that he had in the book. So I had a wonder. So Bran says that Lewin sent a bird to his mom. Where would he send this bird?
Did he also send one to Ned?
He sent one to Ned,
And
to his mom, and to Jon. And I thought, he's going to just put on a secret address? Nobody knows where she's going to end up.
Yeah.
So how did he manage to send her a bird? And then they wonder why the message never got there.
That is interesting, because presumably the birds are taught to go to places.
Right.
So you can't just send it to a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Well done.
Oh, thank you.
All right, so sorry.
I was just going to say, you should tell our lovely audience about your ski lift story.
I had quite a few. I think you mean the one where
With the
the
kids.
kids. So I was getting on the ski lift, and a guy was sort of like, the ski lift, the queue for the ski lift is kind of like a mess. You know, there's sort of like just a bunch of people on skis sort of like stumbling forward. This ski lift was 4 people wide, and there were 4 children just in front of me. And there was a guy alongside me, and the guy was obviously, I mean, I guess father to these children, because one by one he asked the 4 children if they wanted to ride by him, and all 4 of them said no.
Which is a good advice if he's not their father.
Right? Yeah, true.
Random stranger. I totally agree with these kids.
So they rode. The 4 kids rode together, and I said to the guy, I said, well, you can ride with me. So we sat behind, we were one behind these kids, and we went up and we chatted for a while. He was a nice guy, and we had a nice time. So at the top of the ski lift, where you disembark, the ski lift goes up to a sort of platform, and then you have to ski off the platform, and it dips back down again to get you away from the ski lift as quickly as possible.
So other people can get off as well.
When they disembarked, they all 4 fell in a spectacular fashion. I mean, it looked like one of those cartoon fights where there's just a cloud of stuff coming up and then poles and skis popping up out of it. And so immediately the sort of emergency stop was pressed on the ski lift. And so we were left swinging there just like 10 feet from the disembarking point. No sign of any of these 4 kids. And the guy is sort of like stretching his neck to see if he can see what's going on. And he shouts their names one by one, and no kid reappears.
Just poles and skis sticking out in every direction.
Finally, I mean, it takes easily 30 seconds before even one of them shows their face. But the first one to pop up is laughing their head off. So, you know, it's clearly not a completely disastrous situation. But it takes at least a minute for all 4 of them to disentangle and get back up. I said to the guy, I said, they should have ridden with you.
Right, see? That's what you get. Oh, boy. Anyway.
Yeah. All right, so let's wrap this up. We're going to keep going with this episode Bonanza. We're working hard to do it.
We are. Please make sure you get a chance to check out both episodes in the week if you could. We'd really appreciate that.
Yep. So Brand's struggling to accept his new limitations, and as we mentioned, it must be hard for him having so few people around him that, you know, he's used to be a big family who are all around him, and that would give him comfort. Now he doesn't have them. You know?
Yeah, he's got his older brother who's off busy being Rob the Lord, and he's got little baby Rickon who he
forgets.
He's probably cute and sweet, but he's probably not a lot for company.
So he has Nan and Summer, basically.
Yeah.
And even Summer goes running around occasionally just to rub it in.
Yeah. Poor kid. Yeah. And like I mentioned earlier, old Nan, I think, is a pretty interesting character.
Yeah.
I like her.
Yeah, Rob's doing his best to be Lord of Winterfell, but it does worry me that he's still such a rash boy that he would meet Tyrion with drawn sword.
Yeah.
That's a bit much. You can be frosty to someone.
Yeah, there's a whole thing about guest rights, and especially in the North, that's a big deal, guest rights. So I would have thought someone would have advised him against that. But again, he's the Lord. He can do what he wants. So maybe someone did advise him against it, and he is like, and I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and the wolves not liking Tyrion, I like your theory.
Yeah. So did the assassination attempt was after Jon left for the Wall? Yes, of course it was, because Tyrion left with him, yeah. So Ghost doesn't have Summer telling him.
Right.
I think it's this short guy.
Yeah, because I did wonder why those 3 wolves had an issue with him and Ghost didn't, except for when he knocked Tyrion over when he thought Tyrion was threatening Jon.
Yeah.
So your theory, once again, fits that.
I'm glad we came up with that on the fly. So the Brothers of the Night Watch seem to think that Benjen's dead.
Yeah.
And are too brutal to keep that to themselves.
What benefit does anybody get from bringing that up to these 2 boys? Oh, well, I guess, they're not exactly hired for their tact
indeed.
and putting on the kit gloves to handle children.
Right.
Probably not a lot of handling children in any capacity.
Right, presumably not. Yes, I mean, like the whole vow of celibacy. I mean, there aren't too many children up at the Wall.
Yeah. So, got anything else?
No, that's it, I think.
All right.
That's good. So you can always reach out to us on ghosts.harrenhall@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at @GhostHarrenhall, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We're on them all.
We are. And here comes just a quick plea to help get the word out. If you like what we're doing, leaving us a review on iTunes or podchaser.com would be really a great way to help us out. And of course, you can always tweet, Facebook about us too. We appreciate any kind of interaction.
Certainly would. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.